So my name is John Ellenich. I'm a mobile UI designer at a company called Jive Software. I've been designing iOS apps pretty much since the iPhone was announced, even back before there was an official SDK, back when mobile Safari was going to be the future of mobile app development. After that, I was working at a company called Mobiata, where we made an app called Flight Track. It's probably one of the top downloaded apps on the App Store. And while I was at Mobiata, I made also the Expedia Hotels application for Expedia, which was also another pretty big success. After Mobiata, I started working with a company called Taptera, which actually has an office here in Poland. So that's how I met some of you guys in the audience. Taptera kind of focuses on making mobile apps for the enterprise, trying to bring that consumer app experience over to enterprise applications. Lately, I've been working on social collaboration apps, so that's what Jive does. So Jive is a social collaboration platform for both internal, meaning like internal intranet employee discussions and collaborations, and also can be used for external communities like support communities. It's pretty much one of the only pure social intranet software companies still around. After Microsoft gobbled up Yammer, started integrating that with SharePoint, the development has been a little bit slow on Yammer's actual social functionality, or things like Chatter, which is part of the CRM system, Salesforce. So really big companies use Jive. So places like T-Mobile, Verizon, Genentech, Volkswagen, a lot of the Fortune 500 companies use Jive both internally and externally within their company. So they use it internally for collaboration and externally for supporting their customers. Jive is sometimes treated as kind of white label software. So a lot of times when you're using Jive, you actually have no idea that you're actually using it because the UI has been revamped considerably to kind of fall in with that company's guidelines, especially if you're using it for an external community. If you've ever used Apple's support forums, those are Jive actually. And same with T-Mobile and Verizon. Those are big external support communities that are built off of the Jive platform. So today I'm going to talk about a few things. First, I'm going to talk about kind of how the Jive design team is structured, how we work with various departments in the company. This is my kind of first experience at a big company. Usually I was at startups before, so it's kind of still weird for me to walk down the hall in the office and not know the person that I pass or what team they're on. Then I'm going to talk a little bit about how, when I started at Jive, the mobile team took the core functionality of the Jive web app and applied that to the native iOS and Android applications. Then I'm going to go through a little bit about the workflow that my team kind of goes through on a day-to-day basis when we're building the app. Our build and test process, so how we test features as we're building them. And then also the fun tools that I get to use every day as a designer to kind of do my job there. So let's talk about Jive design, the Jive design team. So the Jive design team isn't just responsible for the typical things that you kind of think about from a design perspective, like UI and UX. It's much more complicated than that because Jive is a very comprehensive platform. So the design team is responsible for conceptual design, meaning like when we want to introduce a new feature or we get a feature request from a customer, how that kind of integrates into the platform and how it affects other features that already exist. We also are responsible for the complete information architecture of the application. So when we do introduce this great new feature, kind of where it fits in the navigation structure, and again, how it affects other portions of the application. Do we like cut an older feature to introduce this new one? Do we rev a feature up and iterate on it? Obviously, visual design, so we're in charge of kind of how the design of the base Jive kind of theme is. Like I said before, it is sometimes treated as white label software, but when you do buy Jive, it does come with a default theme, but like I said, you can brand it. And then obviously experience design and also HTML and CSS, so the actual front end that you see when you're using the product, the design team is responsible for producing that. So just recently, we actually moved the design team under the product management kind of branch of the company. Before we were part of the engineering group. And we moved into product management more so we could better understand kind of where features were coming from when the PM team was talking with our customers. A lot of times, features that customers are requesting are driving big deals within the company, and those obviously affect the design of the application. So we moved better under product management to kind of better understand where the feature requests were coming from. So we have kind of 3 roles, if you want to say, in the design team. So we have design management, which kind of talks with product managers who are talking with customers and kind of plans and roadmaps where the design of the application is going to go. They also do like resource management, what designers' skill set falls into what feature best. So they allocate different designers onto different features. And then we have product designers who are more familiar with kind of the core architecture of the product. So like I said, it's a pretty comprehensive system. There are a lot of features, and the product designers are really familiar with what APIs are available, how long a feature is going to take to develop. They do a lot of early prototyping and wireframing, a lot of documentation about a feature. And then we have kind of your traditional UI designer who kind of does the finished features. So they do a lot of more high fidelity prototypes with full visual design and the flow of how it's actually going to look in the shipping product. And that's kind of where I fall into. So like I said, the design team kind of has a relationship with product management and the engineering team. So we talk to product management, we kind of figure out solutions to their problems, or the requests that are coming in from customers, or a feature maybe that we think would be good for the next version. And then we work with engineering to kind of figure out the way that we can solve it from an architecture standpoint. And maybe solving a specific feature or problem might come from the result of 2 other features, combining those into one solution for the problem. So it's a very organic relationship between all 3 kind of branches working back and forth. And like I said before, our designers are pretty technical as far as being able to implement the front-end user interface. So they know HTML and CSS. From a mobile perspective, obviously we're not styling and doing our layouts with HTML or CSS. So myself, I'm pretty familiar with the iOS and Android platform, so I do pull the branches from Git, compile them. I can go into Xcode, swap assets if I need to adjust an icon or a font size or a color, nudge the alignment of something. And I do understand the limitations and capabilities of older versions versus iOS 6 versus iOS 7. What can you do? What's new? Things like AirDrop, for instance, is something fun that we're working on adding. So as a mobile designer, being kind of familiar with the platform and being able to pull from the repository and test out a feature. So the next thing I want to talk about is how, from a mobile perspective, how I took the core Jive platform and adapted it to more of a mobile workflow. So this is Jive. Basically, yeah, there we go. So there's kind of a few sections that you see here. We have, it's sort of like a stream view. So think of this this is all the activity that's happening around people that I follow. So if they comment on a document or they edit a document, it kind of shows up in this central stream view. Another kind of really important thing is the inbox. So this is kind of where if I publish a document, kind of what's happening around that document. Think of it kind of like notifications. Then people, places, and content. Those are also kind of fairly important in the Jive kind of ecosystem. People, obviously, those are the coworkers in your organization. Places, think of those kind of as groups of things. So you can have groups of like the engineering department. You can even have groups within groups. So in the design group, we have the Jive for iPad group within the design group. The other thing is content. So things like documents, discussions, blog posts, status updates. It really has like a rich text editor built into the platform. The other thing is recommended and trending content. So trying to get the users to engage more into the community. That's very important in like a social internet setting where you want a lot of adoption. So knowing how people use iPhones and iPads, we wanted to do kind of two really central things. One, when you're on your mobile phone, you oftentimes only have like a few seconds to kind of jump in, kind of figure out what you need to do, or reply to a message, and then exit, stick the phone in your pocket, and move on. So we really wanted to make the inbox functionality really quick and really fast on the mobile side. And then on the tablet or iPad, the thing that we were kind of finding was a lot of our customers in their larger sales teams are starting to deploy iPads with these external keyboards. And part of the, like I was saying, part of the experience of using Jive is creating this content. And when you pair one of these external keyboards with an iPad, you get a pretty good laptop replacement. And when you're working within Jive, the ability to type up a discussion or a document really quick on a small little computer is pretty important. So we really wanted to focus on content creation on the iPad. So here's 3 apps that we're kind of drawing a little inspiration from for our application. The one on the left is Twitterific, so a basically social media stream of things coming in. The center one is Reader, so kind of a reading list of things. So think how that kind of relates to our inbox view. Twitterific obviously relates to kind of our stream view of activity. And then the other one is just the built-in mail application. So that's probably the most popular way people create content on their devices, composing an email. So when we were making the Jive mobile application, we wanted to kind of take approaches where people are very familiar with using other apps and make our app similar in that vein. So we took the information architecture of Jive, which is kind of how I explained from that screenshot. You have your home view, which is activity within the company and kind of discovering what's new. You have this people view, which finding people within the company, viewing and exploring the org chart, kind of discovering your coworkers. Then we have the groups view, which you can become a member of the group. We want people to discover new groups to engage them in the community. And if I need to find help or expertise in a particular area in this large organization, I want to be able to find particular groups. And then content. I need to view the content that I've published. I need to be able to find content that, maybe I don't know the name of the document. I need pretty good search. And then obviously discovering new content. So we took those and you could kind of see, they kind of map out into this view my stuff, find stuff, and discover stuff. So we took that, and here's the IA for the iPad application. So we kind of have this view my area, so view my people groups and content, find people groups and content within the organization, and discover people groups content, and then activity falls under discovery, because when you get a bigger organization in these stream views, If you could imagine watching like 10,000 Twitter people like in an 8-hour span workday, kind of posting constantly, you know, it kind of gets a little overwhelming. So we want to create a better discovery experience. So falling kind of in line with what we were saying, we wanted to create experiences that users were kind of familiar with. We ended up with this classic slide out menu. And you have your inbox up top, which is pretty important. You have your profile, and this is kind of a new concept that in the core web application, it is present, but it's a little bit more hidden. We wanted to kind of make the application more central to the user because these are usually personal devices. So we wanted to make it very quick for the person to be able to find the drafts that they have or discussions that they're currently participating in. And then your find, which is kind of search with some extra stuff on top of it, which I'll get to later, settings. And then here are all your activity streams. So one other thing in Jive is you can create custom streams that are kind of building blocks stacked on top of each other, where you can make a stream of only your direct reports, or maybe you want a stream that has all documents that are tagged with iPad, for instance. So you can create custom streams, and then obviously create menu. This is a little bit of a stream view. So the other really important part about Jive is content creation. So you can create discussions, which are kind of like question and answers, or if you need to like work through a problem, you can just have a discussion with people. Documents, think of it kind of like Google Docs. Blog post, so every user in the community gets a blog. At Jive, we actually encourage people to blog about once per week. There's things like status updates, which is kind of like a tweet. There's direct messaging, which is similar to email. There's video, which is just uploading a video. So one of the things that we really, like I was saying, we really wanted to concentrate on was the rich text editing experience on iOS. So here's a demo of the text editor that we made. So one kind of very complicated, I don't want to call it a ball and chain that we have to deal with, but basically the way Jive stores its content is all in HTML. So we have to kind of construct these crazy views of HTML, which pretty much anything below where it says some places is a web view. And everything above that is a native view. But we want the web view to look as close as possible to a native view and interact, as you would expect a native view to interact. So we have things like the native selection. We actually built an accessory bar that kind of looks exactly like the built-in keyboard, as if, oh, this is just the formatting bar that shipped with iOS 7. You can do things like insert images. So keep in mind, this is all HTML. So it's generating the HTML in the back end. So when I publish that document, it renders the same in the web application as it does in the native application. So bold, italic, all the things you would expect from a text editor. Next, I'm going to talk about a little bit about the workflow that we go through on the mobile team. So when we're thinking about features, a lot of times those feature requests come in from customers. So we really kind of, sit in a room, talk about where the, like I was saying, maybe the solution to the problem that two customers are having is a different feature over here with a different feature that kind of solves the overall problem. So we really try to understand where these requests are coming in, because we are building a product, we're not doing contract work or something like that. So the other thing is we really want to simplify these features, because when you make them simpler to use, that accelerates the adoption of the feature. So the worst thing that you can do is build a crazy feature that's kind of complicated, and obviously then the adoption falls off and it's a dead feature that no one uses. And then you have that baggage to kind of carry with you as you go through your versions of the product. The other thing that we really want to do is make sure that all the features have purpose and provide overall structure to the platform, so things that aren't just placed randomly in the information architecture, or they really provide value, basically. And the other thing that we're trying to do is we're trying to replace email within a company. So we really want to demonstrate that Jive is better than using email at all costs. So we use Jive to make Jive. So in our internal instance, these are some design documents basically outlining all the features that are going into the applications. I went to a talk earlier, and someone was asking about when you do your design specification, what happens when that gets outdated, and how do you actually keep that document up to date? Well, these feature documents kind of can apply to that scenario where you can easily go in and replace a screenshot, and then when the developer is going in and they're looking for, what's the latest view for the login flow of the application, they have the latest document. And they can actually go back and look at previous versions that you've published if they want to compare and contrast differences. So we actually use the product to make the product, which is kind of fun. The other thing is iteration. Heard this a million times before. Iterate your features over and over and over again. Obviously, we didn't end up just magically with the iPhone 5S. They had to iterate through the thing. So I'm going to walk through one of our features right now that we iterate. So we had this concept of the Me tab in the iOS application, meaning that we wanted a place where the user kind of lived in the application. So we wanted to have basically their custom streams and their published document kind of in one center, or their published content within one central location. So here's the first version of that view. We found that people didn't really know kind of where the left and right arrows were going to take you. Like, one of the problems with streams is you can have however many you want. So providing like an easy way to support infinite navigation is a kind of tough problem. Then we introduced this sidebar that is kind of, like we were saying, we wanted it easy for people to get to kind of places that they're frequently interacting with. So we added a sidebar that's people and places. So places that you frequently are part of or are publishing content to, and people that you're frequently communicating to. And like I was saying in the previous one, we didn't think it was obvious how you switch between your streams and content. So we introduced like this huge navigation, like, hey, it's right here, obvious. But then it's like, how do you divide the kind of different filters on the bottom? So right here, we had to introduce the sliding bar to go between participated author and drafts and move the settings. It was just too much UI. Another iteration of where we added some color to the stream view. And then, so about 3/4 of the way through our development on the first iPad version, we knew that iOS 7 was going to go a completely different look and feel than iOS 6. And we're a productivity application, so like I was saying, we really wanted to look like we were part of the OS, so we had to kind of completely change our design about 3/4 of the way through development. So this is the first kind of potentially what iOS 7 could look like. And then this is actually what we have today, which is the full iOS 7 version. Kept the stream view and basically simplified a little bit by when you tap connections, you get a popover that has your authored, participated, your drafts, and a big list of all of your streams. The next one I'm going to talk about is kind of the find view. So we didn't want people to really spend a lot of time browsing through content on their device. We really wanted to make a better search experience. So we have this notion of a filters popover, which you can see right here. So it's a little button. Basically, we have content, people, and places. So 3 rows of results, basically, when you do a search. But you can do some really cool things with it. But when we were kind of envisioning this filters thing, when you tap the popover, we were thinking, okay, you're going to be able to add these filters. So you're going to be able to say like, oh, only show me documents or discussions by specific authors, and we have to provide a search for these things in a specific place. So if you wanted to search only in one place. But what we found is, you'd say, okay, I want to search documents by Chris Rivard in Jive for iPad. So you'd tap on this row, you'd select document, you'd hit the back button, you'd select author, you would do a search for Chris Rivard, you'd hit the back button, you do place, you'd search for Jive for iPad, you'd tap Jive app, you hit back. So it was a lot of yo-yoing basically, back and forth in that UI to find the filters that you wanted to apply to the search. Simultaneously, as we were developing this feature, Jive has this notion of @ mentioning. So anytime you're editing documents, you can just hit the @ key, and basically you can hyperlink people into that content. So if you want to mention them, or if you want to mention another document within a document, or you want to mention a group that that document is associated with, you just hit the @ key, and we're going to give you this popover. Basically, we auto-position the cursor in the search box, and you type away, and it's an aggregated list of people, places, and content. So that seemed to work really well in the text editor. So we thought we could apply that same thing. So basically, in this popover, we have a kind of aggregated search bar with recent, also recently used filters. So in this search box, I can type in a person, place, or a piece of content, and I get an aggregated search result list that I can just tap to insert. And when I tap, it deletes the content out of the search box, inserts the thing, and I can just kind of type away and insert these search facets into the search bar. So this is the final view. So in this example, I'm searching for the string mobile for documents in a specific place, edited in the last 30 days by myself, and then obviously you see in this result list there. The next thing I'm going to talk about is kind of building and testing. So obviously, like I was saying, I frequently pull down, we do a branch for every feature that we're working on, or every story in our Jira. So I go in and, if the developer is ready to kind of preview the feature that they're working on, I can go in, pull down the branch that feature is in, compile it, put it on my device, and get kind of a early feedback in that development cycle. The other thing that we do is we kind of standardized on a color palette and font sizes early on. So we defined all of our colors and all of our fonts. Fonts in particular are kind of interesting because of the dynamic type stuff in iOS 7. We eventually want to support that, so we kind of extracted our fonts by one layer, basically. This is an example of kind of a document that I put together that shows this is a stream view cell. So basically, imagine it over and over and over again down the display, and kind of labeling every part. So we have a common language when we're talking back and forth between design and development. So if I want to talk about the content block, this gray area that's defined as the content block. So when I say, oh, can you make the content preview in the content block a little larger, they know exactly what I'm talking about. Or we need the font on the verb a different color. There's a common language between development and design. And then the other thing, also we point out all of the JV medium font, and we do the same thing for colors too. So there's another document that shows this is JV blue color, this is JV light gray. The other thing that we do is we actually have 3 different versions of our application. Kind of. It's more like 3.5. But so we have the release build, which is the public build that's out on the App Store. We have the develop build, which is our Jenkins server automatically generates a new build every time the developer commits code back to the repository, and then we have the debug build, which is kind of the branch out on Git that we can pull down and compile. So the great thing about this is, as a designer, I can kind of launch the release build, kind of see what the experience is there. I can go, if I'm, say we're developing search, for example, I can actively have the debug build on my device, and whenever I need to search for something in Jive, I can use that version instead of the actual production version. And develop is really good for just like day-to-day testing because it's usually pretty stable. The other thing is tons and tons of screenshots with annotations. So if you kind of can see in here, there's little arrows everywhere. So when the developer is developing a feature, take a really quick screenshot, annotate it, send it back. Pretty simple stuff. The other kind of cool thing is we have a rage shake feature. So when the app isn't behaving as expected, you can actually shake the device. And what we do is we attach the app logs to an email and a screenshot of the current view that the viewer is seeing, so then we can easily shoot those off to a developer. This is actually in the production build too. So if a customer is having a particular issue, they can rage shake their device and email us their logs. Although sometimes they're really sensitive about that, obviously. So what they can do is they can email it internally, get it inspected, and then we can actually get access to whatever they do or don't want us to see. Here's kind of a screenshot of our Jive, or my Jive folder on my device. So I have, this is the other fourth build that I was talking about. It has a little preview badge on it. We usually when we're, it's a good song. Usually when we're developing a bigger epic, the executive team wants kind of a preview build of the application before it's on the App Store. So we do special builds for the development team, and they get labeled with this preview badge so that they know when they're showing it to their colleagues or whatever, they're using sort of a beta version. The other one up here, this one is actually a rough prototype with Flinto, which I'll talk about in a little bit. The other thing that I did was I used only the mobile apps for a week and wrote this blog post using the iPad with the keyboard. Obviously, that was a pretty eye-opening experience. Ran across some bugs, like did you know that a web view, you can only have it be so many pixels tall? That was an interesting one. And in long discussions in Jive, when the first discussion, it's a pretty big view. I think it's maybe like 15,000 pixels or something, but we run into a limitation with that quite often. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the tools that I use every day to kind of do all of this stuff. The first one is Scala Preview. This app is awesome and it's free. I would pay probably $500 for this app because it's amazing. Basically what it allows you to do is mirror whatever you're working on in Photoshop on your actual device. So it makes it really good for checking like font sizes and kind of just what your app looks like, because a lot of times the screens on iPhone and iPad have different color values than your actual cinema display or whatever monitor you're using. It's also iOS and Android, which is pretty awesome. The other one I use a lot is Keynote. So just prototyping like simple app animations. So this is just for our create menu on iPad, we wanted to do kind of a cube effect flip. This took literally like 10 minutes in Keynote and Photoshop. I just exported my layers as PNGs, stuck them in Keynote, put the cube transition on, and then I could show the developer, okay, this is kind of what we're going for when we want to create this animation. So this is kind of an interesting view. I mocked this one up in Keynote, but it's a pretty complicated interaction. So what we wanted to do was we wanted to have kind of this inertial scroll. So when I open one of these panels in the search results, the other two remaining panels kind of slide out naturally from each other. So you can see they're kind of animating in the background as as I'm dragging up and down. The other thing that this view needs to do is scroll infinitely. So when we were mocking this up, it's really hard to kind of convey that, yeah, so when I continue to scroll up, if I continue to move up with my finger, the view inside of itself continues to scroll. So what we did was, I worked with the developer and we just did like the crappiest like UI possible, but we wanted to really nail down the interaction. So this is actually a real coded app. It doesn't have any of the extra graphics, obviously, that the core application has, but it shows how the interactions work when I'm scrolling within these panels. The other kind of fun thing is we filed a patent for the UI, which was kind of interesting to work with the lawyers to convey like what is exactly happening in this. So the cool thing is you can pass this around and play with it. It's really smooth. You totally get the interactions because there's no other UI cruft on top of it. And then the cool thing is they can kind of just take that code that they wrote for this UI once we have the kind of physics down and just move that into the core app and put the rest of the graphics in. The other one that I've been using quite a lot lately is Flinto, which is a web-based prototyping tool. Really, really cool because all you do is you drag your images into this thing, you specify kind of tappable hotspots on the document, you can link them up. It supports native transitions between the views. My favorite thing about it is you can actually specify scroll views. So if you notice there's these little red markers. What I do is in Photoshop, if you want like this central area to scroll, all you do is you make your comp larger and then you specify this like, okay, this area is not going to scroll and neither is this area, and the area between it, no matter how long it is, it'll scroll just like a native view. Other prototyping tools can also do that. I just don't find it as simple as this one. And the other kind of neat thing working on this is it's really simple to start with paper prototypes in this. So basically what I do is I just sketch out a bunch of screenshots or sketches in my notebook, snap photos of them. You can drop the photos in here, link them up, and then when you're actually designing the app, you can go through screen by screen and just kind of drop them in to replace them, and all the hotspots and everything stay the same. So it's really easy for kind of building out your prototype one screen at a time from paper prototype to high fidelity mockups. It's really cool. The other nice thing about it is you can send someone a text, they get a text, they tap on a link, and they can install it right to their home screen because it's a web app. So this is great for showing like product management. Oh, hey, we're working on this feature. Here's kind of what we're expecting. And they always sort of have the latest and greatest version because it lives out on the web. So whenever they launch it from the home screen icon, it downloads the latest prototype. The other one that I use a lot is Motion. Concepting kind of really more complex animations that aren't in Keynote. And I don't have to have a developer to kind of help me code. So basically, this is showing a bounce animation. All it is 2 PNGs, and there is a motion path that says move up the motion path and then move down the motion path. And then I applied a custom speed, and you can kind of see the curve here that is causing it to look very fluid. And I can show the developer, oh, this is the curve that we're kind of looking at, and they can work their development magic and figure out the algorithm that creates that. The other one that I use is Quartz Composer. So Quartz Composer is something that ships with the Apple development tools. And this allows you to pretty much create any UI that you want. The problem is it's very complicated and it takes a really long time to make one of these. So basically, you have this library of patches, and you kind of link inputs and outputs, and there's things like inertia and snapping, a lot of the kind of base animations that you would expect in OS X. And then you get an actual clickable prototype. So when I click, you can see the little bar under recents and peers was expanding. when I drag it down, these kind of expand, saying, hey, you can drop this thing that you're holding on to. When I release the icon, it slowly, with nice inertia, goes back into its spot. So you can actually really play around with this. Again, earlier, someone was saying, when you show these to like the executive team, they're like, oh, so the app is done, right? The kind of other neat thing about this is you can kind of look at the values of these. So if the developer has some questions about actually what the inertia is, they can kind of look at the values in the project. Facebook just recently released this origami toolkit, which is basically a patch kit for Quartz Composer that one of the biggest problems with Quartz Composer is actually setting up the initial project to be able to drop PNGs in and have like clicking and transitions and stuff. So Facebook actually, the design team created origami toolkit that kind of makes that initial setup and kind of the interactions that you would expect just to have available really quickly to add into the project. There's also a really nice tutorial about creating Facebook Home in Quartz Composer that was released a couple of months ago. It's a long tutorial, but it really is well put together and makes it a lot easier to understand basically how to work with the patches in Quartz. All right, so to wrap up, get technical and learn the platform. So understand the limitations and capabilities of the platform that you're working on. That's going to help you kind of plan for future releases and really kind of push the limits of your app. Solve customer requests in unique ways. So like I was saying, the solution to a single problem might be the solution to two problems together into one thing. Document features in complex systems. We write a lot of documentation because the Jive platform is very complex, and when you change something in one spot, it's going to affect that something somewhere else that you didn't even expect. So document your features. Iterate, iterate, iterate. So make sure you go through those iterations. Even if it kind of feels like you're spinning your wheels a little bit, continue iterating. And when you release 1.0, don't just stop. Continue to build and release and update. Also test a lot. Like I said, we have those 3 test versions. So if I wanted to test a specific feature, I can just launch the debug version on my device when I'm out and about actually using it in the real world. And use lots of prototypes. Prototype everything. Even if it's a small feature, it takes 2 seconds to put down 2 little sketches and link them together in something like Flinto. So make sure you make lots of prototypes. Questions?
Hi, I would like to you to elaborate a bit how you deal with customer requests actually from the enterprise. So I experienced in my previous career, and I was in a comfortable position working with Apple, and when enterprise customers came with some weird requirements, we had the freedom to say basically, okay, we are not going to encrypt the calendar, fuck you.
Yeah.
If you are not Apple, then you are not in that position, and this might actually make a bad customer experience for the end user, whereas the guys who pay your check.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of the, I don't want to say problem of working with enterprise customers is, it's a bit about like contracting or freelancing in the fact that they're potentially paying you like millions of dollars, and they can kind of shift their weight around to get a particular feature in. And oftentimes, when we're doing a deal, we'll agree to put something in, but the way that the feature is materialized is not potentially exactly the way that they were expecting it. The solution could be completely different, but it still solves that same problem that they're wanting to think. And it's kind of up to the product management team to kind of communicate with the customer and kind of work that relationship to say like, we're willing to work with you and figure and work through this problem. And here are ways that our design team is kind of thinking about solving that. So it's not necessarily a yes or no, yes, we're going to do it, no, we're not going to do it. It's kind of a, you want Jive, we want you as a customer, so let's kind of work through this issue and kind of figure out where we can land that we're both kind of happy and satisfied.
Just a quick follow-up. If you compare that to the situation like a couple of years ago, if you compare this situation today to the situation a couple of years ago, do you have the impression from your customers that they have grown to understand that
Yes.
customer experience for the end users really matters?
Yeah, and they're just starting to kind of come around on mobile too in that regard. Like they understand that, in 1 to 2 years, like people are going to be doing the majority of their work from their phone or their iPad. Obviously it depends on what type of work you do. Obviously, if you're a coder, you're not going to be using an iPad. Well, I've seen some people do that, but if you're a basic knowledge worker, mobile is here, and they understand that, and so they're willing to kind of compromise on where they're going. The biggest, one of the biggest things that we kind of ran into in the last couple months is security and authentication, and supporting tons of different auth types. And we have our own like simple stuff. We have we partner with Okta now for SSO. Companies have their own, so it's that has been kind of a nightmare. Because they're not really willing to compromise there. And like, as a user, when I download the Jive app from the App Store, I just want to do my work, right? I don't want to authenticate 100 times. Every time I launch the app, type in my password. Like, I don't want that. I just want to use the application. And what we've been trying to do is really educate our customers on things like MDM and kind of helping them meet MDM partners that Jive has to solve the authentication issues that they're having, basically. So it's kind of like an education thing, mostly. Yep. Oh. Just yell. No.
Hi, I've got a question regarding the slide you shown of having 3 different versions of the app shipped on the device. As anyone who has ever tried to change the bundle ID late in the process, I'm curious, how do you manage the exact deployment details? Do you modify the bundle ID? Do you have like a different sets of certificates?
That's the developers that do that magic. I can't answer your question. I'm not familiar with how they change bundle IDs in the application. Sorry. Maybe there's a developer in here that could explain how that could work.
I can explain.
The guy in the blue shirt. I think there's a question down here. Yeah. If you just want to tell me, I can repeat it.
Do you use analytics to influence the design? And if yes, I would be really interested. What are the numbers for people using like Explore kind of functions?
The question is if we use analytics to influence the design. We, on the mobile side, so we just kind of launched the fresh version of our app about 3 months ago. So we haven't really had a chance to kind of look at our analytics and affect the design yet. Before I started, we had a terrible web hybrid system because we didn't know, like, and in enterprise, it's kind of delayed as far as what platforms you support and stuff. So before we had to support things like Palm and BlackBerry, Windows Phone, like a bevy of different operating systems because the market wasn't pretty much set. So we kind of scrapped that and started fresh on iOS and Android. And like I said, we just released 3.0, which is kind of the fresh stuff. So we haven't really had a chance to take a look at the analytics. The only one that I know, like kind of off the top of my head, is the iOS versus Android. In the enterprise, we have about 75% iOS, mostly because a lot of times when enterprises do mass distributions, it's usually iPhones or iPads. And in a bring your own device scenario, it's usually much more heavily towards Android. But in our case in particular, it's about 75% iOS. But we are like, treating them as equal because we know obviously like as the market moves forward, enterprises are going to start adopting Android as much as the consumer world has, basically. Any other questions? All right, thank you.